Amid a widespread European cost of living and housing crisis, which has hit young people particularly hard, alongside ongoing geopolitical turmoil, Europe's centre-left social democratic parties, having lost their traditional industrial base and struggled to reinvent themselves, are facing decline. Across countries from Denmark to Germany to the UK, younger left-leaning voters are increasingly turning towards harder left parties. So in this video, we're going to explain why young Europeans have, in the last year or so, shifted further to the left. We've heard a lot of talk about Europe de-risking or decoupling from the US recently. So in the latest issue of our magazine, we thought we'd discuss whether it's actually feasible and why Europe could still struggle without US backing. That's just one of the 72 pages in the magazine, because as always, there's more to too long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. For much of the 20th century, centre-left parties drew on a mass working class base, rooted in trade unions and industrial labour. However, since the mid-1980s, this foundation has steadily eroded. Deindustrialization moved European countries towards post-industrial economies and reduced the size of the traditional blue-collar workforce, while trade union membership declined across the continent. To try and stay politically relevant, some of the centre-left parties rebranded themselves with a third-way approach. Spearheaded by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, this new strategy marked a significant ideological shift towards the political centre, embracing market-oriented economic policies and globalisation, while promoting social justice and investment rather than top-down redistribution. Initially, this repositioning proved electorally successful. At the turn of the century, centre-left parties remained highly competitive across Europe. For example, Germany's Social Democratic Party, or SPD, led by Gerhard Schröder, secured around 40% of the vote in 1998, its first win since 1972. However, those on the left argue that this shift amounted to little more than neoliberalism in practice, weakening redistribution and accepting higher levels of inequality. Against this backdrop, a new wave of radical left parties emerged across Europe. These included Die Linke in Germany, Jean-Luc Mélenchon's Parti de Gauche in France, a precursor to today's France Unbowed, the Coalition of the Radical Left, or Syriza in Greece, the Left Bloc in Portugal, and later Podemos in Spain. And the Eurozone crisis only further fueled this shift towards the radical left. In countries like Greece, Spain, and Portugal, austerity measures were initially implemented by centre-left governments. This triggered widespread public backlash and mass protest movements, creating political space for radical left parties, particularly Syriza and Podemos, who were able to rapidly mobilise and embed themselves within these movements. At the time, on average, social democratic parties began to lose support. For example, in Germany, the SPD saw its vote share fall by more than 10 percentage points at the 2009 election, and continued performing poorly throughout the 2010s. In France, the Socialist Party, victorious in 2012, almost totally collapsed in 2017, becoming a marginal force. Similarly, in the Netherlands and the Czech Republic, social democratic parties fell into the single digits in their 2017 parliamentary elections. In Greece, the once dominant centre-left PASOK had its vote share drop by more than 30 percentage points in 2012, and declined even further in subsequent elections. In 2015, Syriza came to power in Greece, while Podemos in Spain and the Left Bloc in Portugal achieved historic electoral breakthroughs. In the UK, Jeremy Corbyn's takeover of the Labour Party reflected a similar surge on the left. However, this momentum proved difficult to sustain, as the far-left parties struggled with internal divisions and the challenges of governing. In Greece, Syriza, elected on an anti-austerity platform, reversed course under economic pressure, accepting a new bailout and further austerity, which shattered its credibility. In Portugal, the left bloc's support for a centre-left government yielded little influence, contributing to its electoral collapse in 2022, and opening space for the far-right Chega party. In fact, the simultaneous rise of the far right, such as Lega in Italy and the Freedom Party in Austria, driven by the refugee crisis and galvanized by Brexit and Donald Trump's election, also shifted votes away from the left, particularly among young voters. However, over the past year or so, radical left parties have shown signs of renewed resurgence, particularly in Western Europe. Recent polling indicates that this support is particularly strong among young voters. In both France and Germany, support for radical left parties among 18 to 24-year-olds has grown markedly, beating out the radical right. This shift is beginning to translate into electoral gains too. In Germany's recent general election, Die Linke nearly doubled its vote share from 4.9% to 8.8%. And current polling now places Die Linke at around 10%, just 3 or 4 points behind the Greens and the SPD, the latter of which faced serious setbacks at last month's regional elections. Then, last week in Denmark, Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen's Social Democrats suffered their worst electoral result in 120 years, while the Green Left overtook the centre-right to secure second place, gaining 3 percentage points compared to 2022. In the UK, the Green Party of England and Wales, led by Zach Polanski, is expected to make significant gains in the upcoming local elections, following a polling surge that has placed it ahead of both the Conservatives and Labour parties, and making it by far and away the most popular party for young people. In fact, according to the Economist poll tracker, since the 2024 general election, support for the Greens among under 35s has tripled, while support for Labour has halved. Now, the way we see it, the most important reason that young voters are shifting further left is because, amid an increasingly polarised European political environment, the centre-left is once again grappling with an identity crisis, unable to retain its core voter base. To offset this, some centre-left parties have supported social policies, particularly on migration, that are often indistinguishable from the right, a strategy that is obviously not appealing to voters on the left. In Denmark, the ruling Social Democrats, who have implemented an infamously restrictive migration policy, lost votes to their left. In the UK, the Labour Party has been inspired by this Danish model, which in turn likely has driven support to the Greens. And in Germany, the far-left Die Linke has positioned itself as a bulwark against the country's apparent rightward shift, particularly on migration, vowing to give, quote, not an inch for the fascists after gains made at last year's elections. Another factor behind the resurgence of the radical left in Europe is growing disillusionment with centre-left parties' responses to recent conflicts in the Middle East, particularly Gaza. Many younger or progressive voters feel that the mainstream parties have failed to offer a clear or consistent position. This has pushed some towards more radical left alternatives, which have generally taken a more pro-Palestinian stance and been more critical of Western foreign policy. Some of these parties have also prescribed themselves as pro-peace, taking a critical stance against NATO and opposing military conscription. This too has appealed to left-leaning young voters, who generally seem more skeptical of the military and military intervention than older generations. Whether the radical left will be able to continue its momentum will largely depend on its ability to maintain unity, and whether the centre-left can carve out a position for itself again and win back disillusioned voters, as evidently adopting right-wing policies and talking points hasn't yet stopped the centre-left's decline. Now, there are a lot of big players involved in this story, and it's no secret that the world we live in is run by big players like these, but not just in the world of politics. Big companies also have a complete monopoly over the world we live in, and avoiding them is kind of out of our control, as they seep into every part of our day-to-day life. But what if we told you that you could get some of that control back, starting with your email? I know you're thinking, my email? How much will that actually help? Well, your email is personal to you, and it's important to keep hold of what's yours. Most messaging apps make sure to let you know that your messages are end-to-end encrypted. So why do emails deserve any less? Well, thankfully, Proton Mail offers a solution to this. It's a private, secure alternative to big companies like Gmail, and will give you everything you need to be productive while also keeping those pesky ads away from your inboxes. Although it's more than just the annoying ads, it's the fact that every single person is born with privacy, but now that privacy is essentially non-existent because of our digital world. Today, children begin building their digital identity before they're even born, without them even having a choice. Email inboxes weren't created to protect children. They were designed to collect data and feed that information into AI systems that will shape the way they're categorized and targeted for life. That's where Proton Mail's Born Private campaign comes in, as they offer a complete generational reset, giving you the opportunity to reserve an email account for your child. Their account can easily be reserved today, and it can be secured and protected for up to 15 years. This will give your child a secure digital start from day one, as when they're ready, their inbox is waiting, private, clean, and fully theirs. So if you want to take back your privacy, or protect the future privacy of your family, start using Proton Mail for free using our link at proton.me/bp/TLDR, and you'll be one step closer to a fully protected online experience. free from data exploitation.